at Africa's emerging bond market. In the last couple of years, the last few years, we've seen rising appetite for African sovereign bonds. U.S., European institutional investors, hedge funds have been looking to Africa for good returns. And of course, we've seen African governments on their own part also issuing Eurobonds. Nigeria has also been a part of that. We'll be looking at the potential of this market to investors, especially outside our shores, and how these funds can be properly utilized by these governments. We look at the risks involved and going forward, how both parties can actually benefit from this. Now, I'm being joined in the studio now by Femi Owokwetu. She's a treasurer at Consolidated Discount Limited. She's also the former vice president of the Financial Market Dealers Association, the FMDA. Thank you so much, Femi, for being here.
Thank you.
Now, tell us about this rising appetite for African sovereign bonds by hedge funds, institutional investors. Of course, they're obviously looking for good returns. So just give us your thoughts on that first.
What we have seen is the interest of foreign investors having interest in Africa, and that is because Africa is becoming the next frontier. It's an emerging market, giving attractive rates compared to what you have in the other countries that are developed. We are having Africa giving attractive rates of about 6 to 7%, and what you would have when you compare to the US, you're looking at about 1.9, and so that disparity for private equity and hedge funds, they're just looking for where there is attractiveness in interest rates and where there is safety. And with the ratings of Africa coming on Standard & Poor's and Finch improving, it's giving them a bit of confidence for the reason to come and invest in Africa. And then we hear about the words BRICS. We're now having about Mint, and that is keeping Africa one of the countries. I mean, under BRICS you had South Africa, and under Mint you are having Nigeria. So where you would see is money coming to Africa, because that is where money is needed to bring Africa out of emerging market to developed market, and money will always go to where there is good returns and there is safety, and that is what we're seeing in Africa at the moment. We're seeing that interest in stability, as most African countries are busy transforming to democracy, and that means stability in political system, and also infrastructural demands needs huge funds, and that is one of the things that African leaders and Africa is looking for. Big, huge amount of money which is out there.
Now, talking about the main point, infrastructure demand, infrastructure needs a demand for funds to help fund this huge infrastructure deficit, particularly in the key African economies. Now, would you also say that these countries who otherwise would have relied on donor aid, do you think that perhaps they're looking to move away from the era of relying on donor aid and now looking at other areas, perhaps improving on tax collection, diversifying the economies away from, the reliance on commodities, and then, of course, issuing Eurobonds?
Yes. What you have seen now is rather than getting handouts from the international bodies, you're saying from developed countries, you want to learn to develop yourself, provide jobs for your people. And what you need to do is, what we have lacking is infrastructure. Africa and Nigeria particularly have a very big deficit in infrastructures, and for that you need huge funds. Now, what you will need is, by providing those infrastructures, you are providing employment. You are also going to make cost of production very, very cheap. And say, for example, what we have seen is, say, for example, Ethiopia some years ago decided to do what you call a diaspora bond to be able to raise money towards developing their dam. And that dam was to improve their energy supply in form of power. I mean, that was trying to tap into money from your citizens overseas to try and develop your country, because your citizens will come back. Now, what you will then see in return is that the GDP of those countries will improve, the economic power of the individuals will improve, and so eventually the poverty level will also going lower because, you know, you are employing people. People are having the capacity to feed themselves, shelter themselves. And so that is where all those monies that is being raised is coming in, instead for having it as handouts in form of, you know, providing aids for famine and all that. We're moving away from that in Africa. And that is going a very long way to improve the infrastructural needs of Africa.
Now, would you say that it's for Africa, where Africa is concerned, it's perfect timing? Now we're having slowing growth in the developed economies. They're looking, hedge funds looking for where to put their money, and now African governments have realized that, you know what, we need extra money instead of just getting donor aid. Let's just, so I'm just, issue of timing, you think it's perfect?
I think it's brilliant. I think there couldn't be a better time for us in Africa. It couldn't be a better time for Africans generally to have this opportunity, because what is happening is that the inflows are coming because there is no other good place that gives better yields than we have at the moment. We don't have that presently going on. And so you see what is happening in Greece, you see what is happening in other African countries, other European countries, and which hitherto had been where money was going to because of, you know, Europe as one financial center. Now, where else will money go that will give a good yield? It's Africa next, with what is going on. Africa will have individual monies, and what is also happening for most African countries is it's also very good that our reserves are improving. So that is giving confidence of our ability to repay. And also, it's also relieving Africans from that strong conditions that IMF and the World Bank give. It's not that